Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to CIO Leadership Live. I'm Mary Fran Johnson, your host for the show, and the CEO of MFJ Media and a contributing columnist on CIO.com, where I write about boardroom strategies for technology leaders. Twice a month, we produce CIO Leadership Live with the generous support of my friends and colleagues at CIO.com and our CIO Leadership, our CIO Executive Council. We're streaming live to you right now on LinkedIn and Twitter, and we welcome all of our viewers to join in this conversation today by sending in questions of your own. We have an editor standing by who is watching the stream and will pass them along to me. To me and to my guest, who today I'm very pleased to be welcoming Luqman Fazl, who is the Chief Information and Digital Officer for New Jersey Transit. Luqman joined New Jersey Transit exactly 1 year before the pandemic struck in March 2019, and he took on at that point his very first public sector role in a 20-year IT leadership career. NJT, for those of us who don't ride the rails in New Jersey, is actually the third largest transit system in the country when you total up its rail stations and more than 19,000 bus stops that link major points in New Jersey, New York, and Philadelphia. Before his current role at NJT, Luqman was the CIO of New Jersey-based Argo TurboServe Corporation, a global supply chain management provider. And before that, he worked with several Fortune 500 companies in various technology leadership roles, including Emblem Health, one of the largest nonprofit health plans in the US, and Avaya, the business communications technology provider. Luqman, thanks so much for joining me today. It's great to
Thank you,
have you
Mary Fran,
here.
for inviting. Happy to be here. Hello, everyone who's joined live.
Joining live, yes. How are you doing? How are you doing personally, and how is your technology team doing at New Jersey Transit? This is an incredibly disruptive time for transit systems everywhere.
Yeah, no, so it's been great. Every crisis, I guess, is an opportunity. From a professional front, even at a personal front, the amount of time I got to spend with my family at home for the last 1 year,
Yeah.
and the strengths and weaknesses and the bonding that we established, it's the same exact which is carried over at the professional front. How do we continue that bond, that togetherness,
Hmm.
while we are, in this pandemic?
Yes.
So, you had to come up with new ways of keeping the team together,
Hmm.
and learning about their issues, whether at a personal level or professional level. When we were all in the building, you would just walk into the office and have a coffee, right?
Right.
Uh,
Yes. I have a lot of conversations these days with CIOs about how uh, how high up on their agenda empathy is. How,
right.
as a leadership quality, I think everybody would have checked that box in the past, but it was not necessarily in the top three. So, and I know you had mentioned when we talked earlier how COVID, especially for a public transit system, really did change everything overnight, and that it was a good thing that you got started a year before it all hit. Tell me about, I know pre-COVID, the ridership just on your daily transit system was well over 900,000 people. What has happened to that in the space of the past year?
So when uh, commuters are down and offices, you're not going to work any longer, it's going to
Hmm.
directly impact us. We are essential services, so we cannot shut down. We have to continue providing the services, because even if that smaller percent of ridership, right now on the rail side it's at 30%, on the bus it's 50%.
Hmm.
That passenger or that rider is an essential worker, but we are transporting them to the hospital or to the other essential services
Hmm.
places, and they're counting on us. So we need to continue operating. That doesn't matter whether it's at 30%, 50%, or back to 100%.
Right, right. The one of the things we mentioned when we were talking about the industry disruption that hit, especially in the public sector, coming into this, you had three big initial goals as you were the new CIO, and this is your first public sector job. So I'm
Mm.
interested to hear what those goals were and how it felt different from the various Fortune 500 and private sector places where you have worked.
So it's interesting how this opportunity came about. So after I completed my work at the previous company, I was interested in joining one of the three industries, where the public sector, nonprofit,
Yeah.
education, and business to consumer. Why? Because these are the industries that you can see your work impacting people's daily lives,
Yes.
and you can see your work appreciated or noticed. So this opportunity came about, first public sector job, and I think the organization was ready. They were not just looking for a person coming in from a public sector background. They wanted a leader who's a change agent, who's going to transform the organization, leapfrog the company, and move it ahead by multiple years in a short amount of time. So one of the internal goals or motto we use internally is, how do we move the company ahead by 40 years, and we have 5 years to do it, which means that every 1 year of work should move us ahead by 8 years.
8 years.
If we have to hit that goal. So it's been very interesting. The culture, of course, just like any other public sector, we had a culture of, let's come to the building, sit around the table, talk it out, as opposed to, in a technology company where you could work from anywhere. And that is how it was. And that's how you find in most public sector agencies.
Well, when you talk about the jumping the company ahead 40 years in a 5-year time period, why those particular numbers? What was significant about that to you?
Typically, looking at the technology life cycle, technology changes every 3 to 5 years.
Yes.
So, the technology business is not like a construction business where it takes you 10 to 15 years to build something.
Better not these days, right?
So that's why that number. And then why 40 years? Because when I joined, and where we were from a technology investment perspective, and we were still giving out wired desktops and wired phones and no collaboration tools. So if you look at that's the same setup you used to have earlier, 40 years ago. 20 years ago, I used to be able to take a laptop home, and I had Wi-Fi. We didn't have any of that.
Okay, so there was an enormous amount of work to do very quickly just on the foundational technology. Is that something that you were enabled to do internally, or was this work with outside partners?
No, this was all internal work. So year one goal was, how do we stabilize our foundation? How do we get to a steady state? Continue that investment. So we did a whole assessment of what our technology footprint is. What out of that technology do we want to continue supporting and investing in, versus getting rid of and sunsetting them and replacing them. Right. So once we knew where our baseline was, then we could then come up with enhancement, improvement, replacement strategies in place to get us to that next level. So in March of 2019, when I joined, from a foundational technology perspective, we were at a 40-year behind. And when all the things that we put in place is not something, it's not rocket science. We are not the first ones to think of that idea. It was just made sense. I could understand years ago when maybe laptops were double the cost of desktops, for example, and from a business perspective, maybe it didn't make sense then. But now the price difference, there is no price difference. In fact, laptops have become a lot cheaper to deploy. And the advantage, the business benefit is significant.
Yes. And
there's a huge cultural change for the company, just in general. And the company was ready for it, to embrace that.
Well, and it sounds like you weren't the only change champion on the staff. You have about 250 IT people working for you. Do I have that right?
Yeah.
Yes. Did you require any additional change management training or any sort of outside help, or was everybody pretty much ready to get on board?
See, in IT, just by the nature of the profession we are in, and the career path we have chosen, we are forced to change ourselves every 3 to 5 years.
Yes.
So I could have been the best Windows 98 administrator in 1998,
Yeah.
but if I'm not the best Windows 10 administrator in 2020, then I have not kept up with the change.
Yes.
So our folks are always wired. Technology folks are always wired to embrace change, to adopt it, to move forward with it. It's now just taking that same mindset and how do we make sure that the rest of the organization is willing to also adopt it.
Yes.
And the way to do it is, if you have to tackle it from a business perspective. What is the business challenge that I'm trying to solve? Because technology will change.
Yes.
In another
It's just the tools. It's the tool
just
set.
a tool. It's a replaceable. It's a commodity. So what are the business challenges that you're trying to solve, and then you propose those solutions, and get rid of those issues. Once you start getting rid of business challenges and business issues, and now you're moving the business closer to their goals. And you being the enabler, you start then building that trust between the two parties.
Yes. Well, it sounds too like the goals from the business side of the organization were pretty quickly aligned with your own technology goals, which were to upgrade the foundation, focus on customer journey, and that sort of thing.
Yes, and there are so in year one, I had internal goals. Goal one being focusing on foundational technologies. Goal two being on business processes and improvements there in the technologies associated with it, and the other was technologies that were customer facing. So in those three goals, the first goal, which was on foundational, the tagline that we used internally was, how do we move from a reactive model to a proactive model?
Yes.
I didn't want another human to tell me that my systems were down. I needed the intelligence in the software to tell me proactively before they were going to go down.
Yes.
From the business, from the customer service and customer experience perspective, the tagline we use internally is, how do we transform that experience, the customer experience, into a journey?
Yeah.
Think of yourself as that person who is waking up Monday morning and going to work. How would you want to be treated? How do you want the technology to support you? How do we make your journey into a journey, a memorable journey, or an experience that you'll remember?
Yes.
So that's that tagline we used there. And from a business process perspective, is how do we leapfrog the organization, move that 40 years? So these were the three internal messaging that we used to get the point across.
Well, and you had a great way that you laid that out for me when we talked earlier. You said you've got three different ways. You can say you've got a job interview and you have to be there in person. So these days you would mask up, right? But you go out, and you said the first one you might drive yourself because you're fully in control. The second one, maybe you'd order an Uber. And that third one, you rely on public transit. Is your ultimate goal to have that public transit be on a par with being able to use a service like Uber?
So we definitely want to provide convenient, easy services to everyone. So we don't differentiate between whether you are close to our station or away from our station. We want to get you from one point to another point as conveniently as possible, as fast as possible. So whether we are able to if we are not able to solve the first mile, last mile problem, and all we are solving is the middle problem, then that's inconvenience to people. At the end, I want to make sure that from a rider perspective, that interview is very important to me. I'm going to choose the method which is most convenient to me, most fastest to me. At that point, at the interview time, I'm not going to look at the most cheapest option. I want the most reliable option because I don't want to miss that interview.
Yes.
So how do we get to that stage where we are considered first as the method of choice? And that's only possible when we are providing better data, better arrival time, better accurate departure time, so that you don't miss your train or your bus.
Right.
And once the reliability goes up, then the confidence of the ridership also goes up. That's one of the reasons why we publish our reliability numbers online onto our website.
Yep.
where by different lines, by different routes, all that data is available.
Well, and imagine one of the riders on one of your commuter trains grabbing a ride back in March of 2019, and now we are in February of 2021. What will they see differently? We talked a lot as we got ready for this interview about how things have changed for the customers. What are some of those differences that they're going to see and the digital technologies behind them that you made part of the foundation in the past year?
So for anybody to consider a ride sharing, ride, so we are the largest ride sharing in the state. So our train can carry 1,000 people, for example. So in a COVID, in a pandemic, how do we make sure that it's safe for you to travel?
Yes.
So a couple of things that we did on the technology front is the capacity and how full my train is and how full my bus is. So when there was a 50% occupancy rate mandate, we wanted to make sure that we are reporting that onto our mobile app, onto our website, so that people feel confident that, hey, this is not going to be an overcrowded train where I have to sit next to somebody less than 6 feet away. So that customer confidence, is important. Similarly, outside of technology, our disinfection work, making sure that it's clean, giving out masks, and having vending machines so that you can get your mask at the station, so that you feel comfortable riding a ride share transport.
Are there any, from a CIO's or a chief digital officer's perspective, when you think right now you're at about 30%, maybe 30 to 50% capacity, after, say, a few months from now, when everyone's had a chance to be vaccinated and they're heading in and they're starting to use transit again, what kind of challenges does that pose for you when it goes back up to 100%?
So I'm not sure how soon it'll go back up to 100%. If companies are now telling employees that, now you don't have to come to work, you can be remote forever. That means ridership impact. It's a direct impact to the ridership.
Yes.
So, do we want it to get to 100%? Yes. Do we all miss going to work? Yes. Do we want to see people? Yes. But do we want to go there 5 days a week? That's open for debate. Several surveys have been done as far as, do you want 5 days? Do you want once a week? Do you want a hybrid solution? Do you want 3 times a week? Do we now build hotels instead of dedicated offices and cubes so that you can then share? So the real estate footprint reduces, and then it's a direct impact to commercial real estate as well. So it's all of that combination. But we just recently we rolled out something called FlexPass, where you can buy, previously we had like a monthly pass.
Yes.
Nobody, very few people are using monthly pass where they are commuting on a daily basis. So now we have FlexPass so that you could, use it as your schedule, according to your schedule. So that's one way getting the ridership closer and giving them, keeping up with what we are seeing outside.
Yes. And now, have you done or have you taken advantage of any kind of surveys, both inside of New Jersey Transit and also with your riders and your customers, that give you more of a pulse on how people are feeling about all these different issues about when to come back and when will I ride again?
Yeah, I mean, we did the pulse, and just like any other company, and there are several surveys, even online, just where people are doing surveys. There's no one, concrete answer that everybody is going to go back 5 days, or nobody's going to go back 5 days. There's nothing like that right now. All we know is people want to see people. They want to have coffee, face to face. They want to get back to normal. And we are ready because it's even in this time, in the pandemic time, we didn't shut down.
Essential services.
It's essential services. So it's just making sure that we keep on going. As capacity increases, we will increase our capacity. We are used to transporting 1 million people a day. That's what we are used to. So we'll continue offer that.
Well, I had a conversation yesterday with a CIO friend who works in the food industry, and he said he's been cautioning his business leaders and saying, well, do we really want to make a decision about something that will impact the next 5 years while we're in the middle of a pandemic? Because it's not going to be like this forever and a day. It can be risky, I think, from a risk management standpoint to decide on something, like say you decide only 50% of our workers are going to return, and so you move to a smaller building. Do you have those kind of conversations with your business executives as well?
Yeah, I mean, we do have those conversations. Our we have not reduced our footprint, from a commercial real estate perspective. So we are still the same size organization. We want all the employees to come back to work, but right now the situation does not permit. Even if, let's say, everybody does get vaccinated, and the confidence level of people goes up, and the infection rate goes down, yeah, we will see a trend as far as increase in ridership. But there will still be people at an individual level where, for example, I have old parents. So even if, let's say, my boss says, hey, everybody comes back to work 5 days a week, am I ready to do that? Am I ready to go to work the next day? Or do I need to, let the dust settle, so to speak, and make sure that there is 0 cases so that I don't infect my parents?
Right. Well, and I know that you've got some of the, not maybe that specific issue addressed, but I wanted to talk about the mobile app because, of course, like any transit system, you have a mobile app, but that in the past year, that was one of your big projects to upgrade and improve that. Tell us about that work and kind of what the before and after difference is now.
Absolutely. So initially, the way people were buying tickets is through, going into the office, in the ticket office, and buying it through the agent. Or we had vending machines called ticket vending machines, TVMs, and it's all over the state. People can, purchase it there. And then, as the mobile app started becoming more and more, adoptable, acceptable, we had an old version, called MyTix, which was a hybrid application. One version worked on both Apple and Android. But if you do that, of course, it's half the development cost. But what happens is then it prevents you from using inbuilt capabilities of the 2 devices, such as facial recognition, thumbprint, location, Apple Pay, Google Pay, all of those capabilities. You're unable to do that. So one of the first things we did was we built 2 separate apps, which were native to those 2 operating systems, Apple and Android. And that itself improved from a customer experience perspective, because now they didn't have to open up the web page and type in the username and password. They could just do your face and it got you in. They could buy tickets using their existing credit card, which was already on Apple or Android, and with a click of the button, pay and purchase the ticket. So that was application improvements that we did just by making it native. But then there were a lot of features that we could start adding and including. So, for example, we added the capacity, how full your bus and the train is. We added feature of your knowing your stop. And one of the challenges our riders had was, if you were traveling at night, besides the board in the train or the bus, inside the train or the bus, which tells you your next stop, or sometimes they speak in the speaker, you're not paying that much attention at times, and you are typically looking out the window to make sure that this is this is the stop. So we said, how can we take that inconvenience and using technology, start alerting people that this is your next stop and this is how far away you are from your destination. So, the way we are looking at it, again, not from a technology perspective, from a business perspective, what are the 2 reasons why riders will not sleep peacefully on a train, for example? Because I would not sleep on the train peacefully because I have the fear I miss my stop,
Yes.
or the fear, or that sometimes in that journey, the conductor will tap on my shoulder and ask me for my ticket.
Yeah.
Those two things, how can we look at it from a technology perspective and
Mhm.
solve it so that you can sleep better?
Well, I
So
love
that's the way to look at it.
I love that approach too, because essentially you're taking a customer issue, which is a business problem really, and saying what do we apply? Which technology will help us do this? It's almost like thinking of yourself as look at the way we all track our UPS and FedEx packages now.
Yeah,
We kind
yeah,
of expect that when we order through e-commerce, but
that's right.
you don't really think of yourself as a package traveling through a system, but that's essentially what you are, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly.
The let's talk about. I know you have some major goals coming up because you've just produced a 10-year strategic plan, and it was what interested me was your number one goal was really all about the focus on safety and security. And New Jersey Transit recently was recognized for a cybersecurity safeguards on customer data. You
Yeah.
are the first public transit agency in the nation to achieve this particular level. Tell us about that and why that was number one on your list.
So when the 10-year strategic plan was laid out, it had five goals, and it's not, one is more important than the other. These are the five goals.
Mm-hmm.
Goal one is the safety and security. Goal two is customer experience. Goal three is stronger economy or stronger New Jersey. Goal four is green planet, and goal
Mm-hmm.
five is innovation. I'm simplifying the goals. The right definition of it is online, but this is essentially what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So when we know that these goals are there, it's going to be there at least for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
So now, what do we do from a technology perspective, and how do we look at business challenges
Mm-hmm.
and map these business challenges to these goals? And then once they are mapped, look at the technology solution that will get rid of that challenge or offer a solution. So when we looked at the safety and security, uh, besides the safety of security of the people and the work that our police department does,
Mm-hmm.
etc. Besides that, what can from a technology perspective we can do so that our riders, our employees feel that their data is protected and is secure. So the most prestigious certification in cybersecurity, which we applied for, was the
Mm-hmm.
ISO 27001, and the certification was about that NJ Transit has all the right security controls in place to protect customer data.
Aha.
Million people traveling, million credit cards. That's the way
Yes.
to look at
Yes.
it.
Yep.
Million phone numbers, a million, first name, last name. So
Yeah.
so
Well,
it was very important that we get this certification.
that's great. I imagine that and taking that much of a proactive approach to information security threats. I do think that that's something that kind of gives NJT bragging rights about that because we've all gotten so conscious of how many times we're basically asked, and when we're adding a new application, they're saying,
Yeah.
we'd like access to this and this and this. And then you get a Gmail alert that says, did you give access to this? Are you sure you should do it? There's a lot of, it's not really fear so much as concern that is starting to map up around that. And data privacy has become such a bigger issue in the last few years, hasn't it?
That's right, and it doesn't mean that by getting this certification from an external body that we are the most secure organization in the world, because the most secure laptop is a powered off laptop.
Yeah.
The day you power it on and connect to your network, it's no longer secure.
Right.
You could have lots of controls in it, whether you have an antivirus running or spam filtering running or all the firewall running. Doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter. But the powered off would be the most secure. But
Yeah.
that's not the way to run business.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to have that cost benefit and say, how can we make sure that we are giving all the services from a technology perspective, yet making sure that the organization is as best as possible protected or resilient.
Yes, exactly. The one of the other elements on that list, your five elements, not in order of importance, but one of them is, of course, innovation. I feel like
Yes.
CIOs have been change champions and innovators and thinkers along those lines for so many years already. When what sort of work have you done in that area that you'd like to tell us about that changes in the last year to essentially shift the thinking on your IT, among your technology organization, but also in the business as a whole about innovation? It sounds from what we've been talking about that a lot of it is very customer centric, but you tell me.
Yeah, yeah. So year two is the year of innovation. That's what we use
Mm-hmm.
internally. What does that mean? So one of the problems we had was just like there is magic quadrants available for IT solutions from various research organizations that this is if you need the best web conferencing solution, these are the top right solutions to focus on, and then you start your evaluation and proof of concept.
Okay.
Nothing like that existed for the transit space. So what are some of the big, major transit specific areas that we work in, which are specific to transit? We deal with, the transportation aspect, but we also have the first mile, last mile. How do I get you from your home to the station or the stop? And then how do I get you to the work, which is called the first mile, last mile? That's a specific transportation issue.
Yeah.
Similarly, tracking of your assets, looking at your data. We have lots of data available. How do we look at that? That's a transit specific issue. And other such issues that are specific to transit. So we created our own magic quadrant so that when there's a business challenge that comes to us, we already know which are the top 3 or 5 companies that we need to be looking at to solve this business problem. In the old days, we used to wait for the problem, then start looking at companies, evaluating them, and then start the whole process. So we have just reversed that cycle. It shortens the whole adoption, innovation, introduction. And when we did that, what we started to then do is we started to, as business challenges came to us, or we heard of them through our other colleagues and other folks in the other transit industry agencies, we started collecting those business challenges, started presenting those business challenges to the organization, to the executive management team, said, hey, these are the challenges we have heard, which are internal to us. These are external to us that we have heard from the outside. We already have the top 3 solutions identified. If these are high importance, could we then start a proof of concept and see if it's feasible or not? And once the proof of concept starts, and if it's feasible and it looks promising, then we go into the production. So that list started, just as in an Excel file, which then grew into
starts.
It grew into a tracker. And what it did was we started tracking all of these challenges and what have we done about it from an innovation perspective. That's cool. Because what I don't want to do is there's a technology company for every solution, every problem. I don't want to start now doing multiple proof of concepts only to find out that, well, we cannot proceed with full production because there's no funding, or there is if the technology fail, I can understand. But we are measuring from a hit rate perspective, a success rate perspective, that when you do identify a challenge, it should go into production. And that's a 70% is what I'm looking at from a win rate perspective. So don't bring in technology solutions which cannot complete the full life cycle.
Right.
So that's the way to look at it.
You don't need technologies that are looking for a solution to prove themselves. You want to essentially reverse that process. I know in my notes I have this down as your DIY vendor innovation tracker. I know that's kind of my unofficial name for it.
It is the innovation tracker. Yeah, and what that has done is, in that tracker, what the first column is the business unit name, and the second column is the business challenge. Okay. As we start presenting that tracker, which is right now a list of 16 things, the different businesses are taking notice of it. I think that, how come this business unit has a challenge? I may have the same problem, so please add my name as a co-sponsor. Or how come you didn't capture my challenge, and how come, please add my challenge to it. So it's creating that marketing buzz inside the company saying that, hey, let's get on the innovation wagon, put your name there so that we could help you solve those challenges.
Well, that's great because usually when the CIO is keeping a list of things like that, you don't generally have your business unit leaders saying, "I want to be on Lookman's list," but they all do. And this is actually creating a certain amount of competition just between the different business units. So that happens.
Yeah.
What can you report about? You've been doing this for a while now. What has been a success? Give us an example.
So in the innovation tracker, for example, the business came to us about, when our employees do return back to work, how do we make sure that they are COVID free? We had, and we had done that study. It was, simple solutions like self-certifying yourself that you are COVID free, to advanced solutions which would mount a thermal camera inside the building and check your temperature and all of that. And once it found that you are clean, it would open the gates for you and you enter the building, and everything in between. So we had that information ready. So we presented the various options to the company and selected a solution which was most beneficial to the entire organization. That is one of the example out of the 16 which made it from the business challenge stage to all the way to production. And there are 6 steps involved in that. Similarly, when the business came to us saying that, hey, how do we ensure that we are 50% occupancy rate? There are numbers that we can get. There are sensors inside the bus which can tell us how many people entered the bus and exited the bus, and gives us that count. Similarly, on the rail side, it's a complete different solution. So one of the ways to do a passenger count on the rail is we deployed a new technology where we are giving out handheld scanners to our conductors. So, even the conductors don't want to touch you to take your ticket. So how do we make sure that we give them a technology solution so that they can scan you without touching you? Sure. So the way we did that was when we gave out these scanners to all of our conductors. So now they can scan ticket. That data that we collect, part of that data is counting of the number of tickets you've scanned, which equals to the number of people inside the train, which then equals to how full your train is.
Exactly. Great. Well, and that's something that I think every CIO knows a version of that, where if you start with the business problem, it's so much better to start with solving that and then apply different technologies to it. I think the only times IT gets in trouble in the past is when you go to the business and say, here's a great technology that can do this, this, and this. Let's apply it here. It's really, I think a lot of what I keep hearing throughout this pandemic year that we've been in is that there's just greater receptivity to this idea from both the business side and the IT side. It's almost like the world has been reversed, and that may be one of the things that reversed along with it. We have a question from the audience, and this is really about it's related to innovation because it goes to your talent challenges. And it sounds like it's a student from another country and wondering if you have any process for bringing in information technology, communications type students into any particular career paths in New Jersey Transit.
So there are a couple of things that we have done in terms of, so we have a big internship program. We partner with many universities. I'm not sure if international universities are part of that, but many universities. Just in IT, we hire about 15 interns a year. And these are paid internship positions. In addition, there are other unpaid internship positions, externships that we use interns from. And it's a good way to give back to the community, to give back to the state universities. I used to be an intern. I believe in the whole concept of making sure that the interns get the opportunities to get real work. I hate it when you are looking at interns as cheap labor, and you're giving them unwanted work. Go sort this file or go do this. That's not how I look at it at all. Because we are helping these kids shape up their next 40 years. So it better be a good experience where they can then choose this as a career. Otherwise, they'll hate the career for the rest of their lives. So we want to show them the true picture. So we have a big program. Similarly, on the we also have, from an internal career development perspective, we have created career paths. Technical track is path one, and non-technical track is path two. So if you are, let's say, unable to keep up with technology, or you are done with it, and you have mastered it, and now you want to try something different. Maybe you want to now manage projects to implement those technologies. So we have a or you want to manage the finance or the budget around those projects. So those are on the non-technical path. So you can switch your roles if and that's what you want to make in your career.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, I think, do you think that there will be a relatively huge uptick in intern and talent acquisition strategies? I just anecdotally, I keep hearing some very similar stories to this, and some companies that might have had to shelve their intern programs several years ago, like during the last recession. There just seems to be a real resurgence of them.
Well, right now, if you really think about it, is if the unemployment rate goes up because of the pandemic, that means from a talent choosing, you'll have a lot of talent to choose from.
Yes.
So it's like a supply demand at the end of the day. But in generally, the talent that we get in IT, which is all, has to have from a technology background. A simple example is a SQL developer. It's a skill that pretty much exists in all companies. That a database exists in all companies. If I need to find my best SQL developer, I'm competing to get that talent from every industry. So I'd be competing. I would be posting it. I would getting resumes from a SQL developer who's at a financial organization, which pay a lot more with big bonuses. Versus a non-profit organization and everything in between, for example, or so how do we find the best talent which we can afford? So how do we get A grade talent for the salary that we offer?
Well, and you tell me you have a couple of dozen positions open now. I think you said it was something in the 40 number.
Yes.
Yes. And what sort of talents and skill sets are you looking for? They're probably very similar to everyone else, the data scientists and API developers and that sort of thing. But tell me about the kind of positions, the kind of skill sets that you want to bring into New Jersey Transit.
Yeah, so there are two ways to look at it. One is to look at what are your existing gaps. People have retired or left the company, or you are expanding the existing capabilities. So now you need double of everything. So that's one way. That's one area. The other is the capabilities that never existed in the organization. So it's a brand new offering or a brand new service, and looking at from that perspective. So so we never had a cloud architect initially. We never had a big data architect or a data scientist to look at predictions and prescription modeling of our data. So we didn't have a robotic process automation person initially. So now we have those capabilities, because if we have to simplify, we have to use technology to enhance the organization. How do we do that? I personally like to think that technology is the most critical piece in every organization. I even go to an extent saying that how do we look at this, that transit is a technology company which happens to be in the space of transportation.
Yes.
Because that's my world, from a technology centric world. But is is that how it should be looked at? Maybe not, because now you are thinking because it should be looked at from a business perspective.
Right. But I don't think you'll find many CEOs or even boards of directors that are unaware of how foundational having a great technology organization is to their own success. I can remember 20 years ago having the CIO of one of the airlines on stage, and it was probably one of the first times I heard that idea that we're not really an airline company, we're a technology company that happens to fly airplanes. And you're right that 20, even 10 years ago, everybody would have, on the business side, would have kind of rolled their eyes about that. But I think that some of the thinking around that may have shifted during this pandemic, because look at how technology has come to the rescue of all these companies. Can you imagine trying to do what you're doing now 10 years ago on that old foundation you found when you got there?
Yeah, so there is this joke going on that which C-level executive was responsible for the
Oh,
whole digital transformation?
yes,
Was it the
yes,
CEO, the CIO, or the C in COVID? The answer is the C in COVID,
yeah.
which was the enabler.
Yeah, yeah. The one of the other questions that came in was actually about that. You mentioned cloud architect, and tell us about how cloud technologies, where they're playing in your strategy, and what sometimes I ask CIOs what percentage of your operation is operating out of the cloud right now, and so if that's appropriate, tell us about that.
Yeah, so we were not a cloud company. We
Mm-hmm.
had few SaaS solutions in
Mm-hmm.
place. We have about 140 applications in the company.
Mm-hmm.
Primarily, we owned everything, data centers,
All
primary data center,
on-prem.
and
Mm-hmm.
everything on-prem. And
Yeah.
that's not the way. That's not the way to provide service. Because if I'm unable to provide, let's say, a 5 9 uptime or availability, and somebody else does it a better job and
Mm-hmm.
a cheaper job, then I could do it by insourcing or owning everything. Because if I own everything, I have to have two of everything. One in the primary, one in the backup. And
Yeah.
my experience, at least, from a disaster recovery or business continuity perspective, you may have an excellent disaster recovery plans in place, and it may work where you have shifted the primary into the backup.
Mm-hmm.
But going back from the backup to the primary, becomes another big, huge challenge because it's that shift is so big.
Yes.
So there are challenges when you own such stuff, and and it gets costly.
Mm-hmm.
Cloud providers over the years have evolved. There's lots of competition. The
Mm-hmm.
pricing has come down. They offer a lot more capabilities than we could ever offer. So why not? I mean, it's just like the say going back to the example. Why desktop? Why not laptop?
Yeah.
Why on-prem? Why not cloud?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And
so
so that's one of the filters you use when a project or a product idea comes up. You think, well, why not look at cloud? Um,
Yeah, and from a strategy perspective, it's mobile first, cloud second. So
mhm.
if you are selecting my 141st application,
Yes.
um, is it mobile ready? Is it cloud ready?
Right.
If it's not, then from an architecture perspective, we may
Mm-hmm.
not want to invest in those.
Yeah. Well, Annette, that was a great point you made earlier too about the way the mobile app has been upgraded, and it was more expensive to do development in native development on both platforms, iOS and Android. But now it's so much more beneficial because of how capable everyone's mobile phones are compared to, that I think that's what's so fascinating about information technology just in general. That at
Yeah,
the moment in time when you think you've got the story nailed, 3 months later there's a different story. So,
yeah, and our old mobile app in the App Store was, I think, two-star rated.
hmm.
Now it's close to 5-star rated. So
Oh,
that itself tells you, the improvement, the impact we have had on people. And
yeah.
the way I look at it is, if I'm transporting, 1 million people a day,
Hmm.
how can I save 15 minutes of their daily commute time? 15 minutes. That's 15 million, New Jersey minutes that I have saved now.
And
That's a lot of minutes.
those minutes go by faster than minutes in, like, say, Montana.
Yeah, exactly. So, from a technology perspective, how can I give you better data, better reporting, better alerting, better notification, a
Hmm.
better experience so that you could
Yes.
uh, save that time? Because now, people are used to now an Uber like notification where you can now track your car, you can track your,
Yep.
arrival time. Yeah. And, if Uber gives you one time and it adds, let's say, 10 minutes on the original time, you are not going to be unhappy, rider for Uber, right? You may
Hmm.
shift to Lyft or some other company.
That's right. You
Uh,
could cancel your ride.
I cancel my ride, not worth it.
Yeah.
Let
Yeah.
me just drive.
Right, I know. Although to say that in New Jersey is a little more life-threatening than to say that in some other states. I say that because my daughter works in a hospital in Newark, New Jersey, and when she first started driving from one of the suburbs into the hospital at the Rutgers University Hospital, I made her father and I, we were a wreck about her driving into Newark. But she's, of course, done just fine. I want to switch back just for a minute because I'm fascinated with your DIY vendor tracker, the innovation tracker. I wanted you to talk a little bit about a position that you created that's related to this, the Chief Innovation Officer. And is that something that you have posted now, or you've already hired someone for it? Because you've essentially made this into a full-time job for someone to oversee.
Yeah, so it's not posted. Right
Hmm.
now, there is a team of people who are looking at managing the whole
Okay.
innovation
Hmm.
life cycle, tracking them, doing the POCs. There is a consultant who's advising us on this, because the kind of skill I'm looking for is somebody who has an excellent technology background,
Hmm.
but excellent technology background with transportation, and which I'm calling it the intelligent transport or the smart transport or the
Good.
smart transit. How do
Hmm.
we look at technologies inside the bus or the train and around it, to make it smarter?
Good. I think that sounds like a great idea. Um, and probably just mentioning that you haven't filled that position yet, you may hear from some people after this
We are
talk.
always looking for good talent. So
There you go.
if anybody knows of any good talent, we never reject a good talent,
There
because
you go.
it's the people that transforms company, because technology will change. So it's
Totally.
getting good set of people is very important.
Yes. Last, as we wrap up our conversation today, I want you to talk a little bit about. I'm always very interested, especially when CIOs have worked across different industries, Fortune 500 companies, nonprofit healthcare, vendor companies in the technology space, your work at Avaya. Tell me about some of the leadership lessons that you have, the way you have balanced all the different competing demands on the role, and share that with the idea of giving some advice to both maybe some of your colleagues, but also for future CIOs, the people that maybe were you 15 years ago.
So you started with the word empathy.
Yeah.
At the end, so we have heard the term business to business, business to consumer,
Hmm.
but I call it, my term is human to human.
There you go.
So H to
Hmm.
H. So how do we make sure that, the people who are
Hmm.
the most important asset for any company, and they are, how do we make sure that the people are taken care of?
Hmm.
Because they are the ones who are responsible for the transformation.
Yeah.
So I always like to hear about people and talent from whichever sources is available.
Hmm.
We always welcome referrals, if because none of our employees are going to refer a bad candidate to us, because it's their reputation as well.
Yeah.
So they always want to make sure that whoever they are referring is something that they could stand by. So it's
Hmm.
very important to, if you're going to be treat others like you want to be treated.
Yes.
So I have an open door policy. I meet not just with my direct reports. I have these lunches, and this used to be, when we were in the building. I used to meet with my entire IT organization on a
Hmm.
30-minute lunch. No business, nothing. Just, hey, how's everything? How's your
Yeah.
family? Because we are humans at the end of the day. We are
And
not
we're even
robots.
humans at the beginning of the day.
And beginning of the day,
Yeah.
yes. So start to finish. So
Right.
how do we, so it's very important to connect with people at that level. So keep that in mind. The other, from a career perspective, it's always good to create your own brand,
Hmm.
your own, and do that marketing. If you are if you it's, an interview like this
Hmm.
is looked at as that, branding of your work. People take notice of it.
Hmm.
Some people may find it valuable, or most may find it valuable, the content.
Hmm.
Some may not, but that's okay.
Yeah.
But you need to reach out. You need to make sure that you are available, you are visible, And that's one of the ways we are attracting talent too, because this message of that we are transforming NJ Transit is the place to be. Come join us. It's
Yes.
all done through these platforms.
Yes. Well, and you're totally preaching to the choir there, because I've been on a mission for 20 years to get CIOs and IT leaders and technology leaders coming up the trail to be future CIOs to recognize that your own professional brand is really it's your reputation in the world, and you want people to know about it. I think a few years ago, if you said personal or professional brand to a CIO, they would kind of say, "Oh, I'm not in the marketing department," and I mean, it felt like it was a little disreputable that you'd be bragging about yourself. So I'm constantly lecturing my CIO friends to be upfront about who you are and what your story is. And of course,
Yeah.
that's easy for me to say. I come out of technology media. Of course, I want to hear CIO stories, but I think it's nothing but beneficial. So
Yeah,
it's
and
been, yeah,
one of and you have to have your internal goals. So, for example, to get to, let's say, this interview, I waited 5 years. Why? Because I was not ready then.
right. Exactly. I'm almost a little suspicious when I have a CIO who's just started a new job and says, "I want to come on and be interviewed." And I'm like, "Really? You
Yeah,
just started?" Because
that's right.
CIOs generally like to have a lot of accomplishments to talk about. And
Mm,
the only downside from my perspective is that sometimes there may be a great story going on, but they're not ready to talk about it. So,
that's right. Yeah.
but I think we've had a lot of great ideas out of you today. So thank you so much, Lukman, for joining me today here. It's been wonderful having you on. And although I'm in Massachusetts, so I won't be riding New Jersey Transit anytime soon, I'm certainly going to mention it to my daughter and see maybe she'll be a little safer getting on one of those big commuter trains than driving into the heart of Newark.
And she can send direct feedback to me as far as her experience and her mobile app experience.
I will
Happy
tell
to
her.
listen. But
Good.
thank you so much, for inviting me. This was excellent. Good, time well spent. And thank you everybody who was joining on the live session. Hope
Yes.
you found this valuable. I'm available on LinkedIn, so happy to connect with anybody who wants to connect.
Marvelous. Okay. Thanks so much for your time today. It's been great having you here.
Same here. Thank you, man.
Now, if you joined us late today, don't worry. You can watch the full episode in my conversation here with Lukman Fazal later on either CIO.com or on YouTube. CIO Leadership Live is also available as an audio podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And I hope you enjoyed the conversation today with Lukman as much as I did, and that you'll join me for our next episode of CIO Leadership Live, which will be on Monday, March 8th, again at noon Eastern Time. And I'll be joined by Hernando Salado, who is the CIO of a healthcare provider called ChenMed. Please take a moment before you leave to subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is called IDG Tech Talk. You can find all of our previous episodes of CIO Leadership Live. And thanks again as well to my friends in the CIO Executive Council and on CIO.com for their ongoing support of the show. We'll see you next time. Stay well and safe out there. Thank you.